Now, the main action of the book takes place in Australia.
Yes.
Why there?
I liked it. I started the book after my second visit there. I've got family my brother and his family live in Australia, and I did a lot of travelling around. And on my second visit, I went to the Blue Mountains, and I was just fascinated by the place. And I think almost less important than the specificity of the place is the fact that it represented such a massive dislocation of place from where my characters started out. You know, if you think now, England to Australia, we're all very relaxed about. People take a flight for a 2-week holiday. You can talk on the phone. You can talk for free on Skype. Then you could only go by sea. It took weeks. And you couldn't pick up a phone and telephone home. It was all letters and, I presume, telegraphs. So a very real sense of distance from where you started out. I think importantly also in the case of my characters, I wanted to uproot them and see the impact of actually being uprooted and taken away from everything you've known and been familiar with. So both of them completely separated from their families and the background and everything that they knew and had been familiar with. That was really, really important to me, and to explore that whole sense of having to adapt to a completely different environment and basically start again.
Now, you've mentioned the Blue Mountains. Where else in Australia do your characters come into contact with?
Sydney, because the book, the Australian adventure begins in Sydney, and then the book at the end finishes in Sydney. So that does feature. Elizabeth starts off living in an area that's basically the rocks near Sydney Harbour, and Michael has some lodgings in Woolloomooloo. Later on, I've also pulled in Pyrmont and the Darling Harbour area, where, in fact, when I spent about 6 months working in Australia, and while I was there, I actually lived in an apartment in a building that was once a wool brokerage in Pyrmont. So I drew on that as well, and the pub that I used to go to occasionally after work, that was there at the time, and the Pyrmont Bridge that you walk across to go into the CBD, that was also present. It's a swing bridge that they lift when there's a big boat.
And when you say go into the CBD?
The Central Business District.
Okay. So again, that would have been there when your book was set?
Yes. Yes. Well, it wouldn't have had skyscrapers and things. It will have looked very different, but the bridge will have looked much the same. But there would probably have been cars going across it, or carts with wool piled on them, that type of thing. Horses.